The silence of deep space shattered as alarm screamed through the bridge of the harmonious dawn. Captain Lyran's crystalline hands trembled over the communications panel, his transparent body flickering with colors that signaled pure terror to anyone who knew his species. Around him, diplomats from 12 different worlds clutched their seats as the ship rocked from another impact. "Shields at 30%, reported the navigation officer, a small furry creature whose voice squeaked with panic. "We cannot withstand another volley." Through the viewport, 3 massive warships loomed like predators circling wounded prey. They were Vrax vessels, dark and angular, covered in weapon ports that glowed with charging energy. The Vrax Dominion had a reputation across the galaxy. They conquered peaceful worlds, enslaved populations, and showed no mercy to those who resisted. Lyran had been transporting peace delegates to a summit when the Vrax appeared. His ship carried no weapons. The Harmonious Dawn was built for diplomacy, not war. Its shields were designed only to protect against space debris and radiation. Against military-grade weapons, they were failing rapidly. "Send a distress signal," Lyran ordered, his voice barely steady. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Someone must hear us." The communications officer worked frantically at her console. "Signal sent, Captain. But the nearest Council security force is 3 days away." 3 days. They had perhaps 3 minutes before the shields collapsed entirely. Lyran watched helplessly as the Vrax vessels moved into position for what would surely be the killing blow. He thought of his family on Crystallis Prime, of the young diplomats aboard who had their whole lives ahead of them. This mission was supposed to be safe, routine even. The lead Vrax ship opened a communication channel. A harsh face appeared on the screen, reptilian and scarred, with eyes that held no compassion. "Surrender your ship and prepare to be boarded. You will serve the Dominion now, or you will die. You have 1 minute to decide." Lyran looked around his bridge at the terrified faces. His people were artists, philosophers, and peacekeepers. They had no experience with violence. Their entire civilization had evolved past such primitive behaviors thousands of years ago. But that also meant they had no way to fight back. "Captain," the communications officer said suddenly, her voice rising with hope, "I'm receiving a response to our distress call. A ship is nearby. They say they're coming to help." "Who?" Lyran asked. "What species?" She checked her console, confusion crossing her features. "They identify themselves as human. From a planet called Earth. I've never heard of them." Neither had Lyran. Humans were new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only a few years ago. They were catalogued as existing, but largely ignored by the major civilizations. No one knew much about them. "How far away are they?" "They say 10 minutes at maximum speed." 10 minutes. The Vrax had given them one. Lyran made a decision that went against every instinct his peaceful nature possessed. "Tell the Vrax we need time to consider. Stall them however you can." The human ship Endeavor tore through space at speeds that pushed its engines beyond recommended limits. On the bridge, Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display with hard eyes. He was a tall man in his 40s, with short brown hair turning gray at the temples and the weathered look of someone who had spent years in difficult environments. "Give me a breakdown." "Lisa," he said to his tactical officer. Lisa Grant leaned over her console. Her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She had served in Earth's Navy before joining the Exploration Corps and knew how to read a combat situation. 3 Vrax warships, heavy class. Each one outguns us by a factor of 4. The diplomatic vessel has minimal shields and no weapons. They won't last long. "What do we know about the Vrax?" Jake asked. "Aggressive species. They've conquered at least 20 systems in the past 50 years. Council records say they respect strength and nothing else." Lisa looked up at him. "Captain, we're an exploration ship. We have defensive weapons, but we're not built for this kind of fight." Jake nodded slowly. Everyone on the bridge was watching him, waiting for his decision. His chief engineer, Ben Carter, a stocky man with grease-stained hands, spoke up from his station. "Engines can handle combat maneuvers, but I can't promise they won't overheat. We push too hard and we might strand ourselves out here." "Medical bay is ready for casualties," added Amy Walsh, their doctor, her voice calm despite the situation. She was a small woman with steady hands and eyes that had seen too much suffering. Ryan Brooks, head of security, cracked his knuckles. He was built like a boxer, with scars on his face that told stories he rarely shared. "My team is geared up." "Just give the word, Captain." Jake looked at each of them. They were scared. He could see it in their faces, but none of them suggested turning away. That was the thing about humans that Jake had learned over his years in space. They were terrified of 1,000 things, but they rarely let that fear stop them from doing what they thought was right. "We're going in," he said simply. "Ben, give me everything the engines can handle. Lisa, prepare weapons but don't lock on until I give the order. Ryan, have your team ready in case we need to board. Amy, clear the mess hall and set it up as a secondary medical area. We might have a lot of injured aliens to treat." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Endeavor accelerated and Jake opened a communication channel to the Vrax ships. "Vrax vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of Earthship Endeavor. Stand down and withdraw from the diplomatic vessel immediately." There was a pause, then laughter. It echoed through the bridge speakers, harsh and mocking. When the Vrax commander finally spoke, his voice dripped with contempt. "Another weak species comes to play hero. You amuse me, human. Leave now and I will let you live. Stay in your ship will become debris." Jake kept his voice level. "I'm giving you one chance to leave peacefully." More laughter. "Then die with the others." The Vrax ships turned toward the Endeavor, weapons charging. On the diplomatic vessel, Captain Lyran watched in horror as the small human ship approached. It was barely a quarter the size of one Vrax warship. The humans had come to help, but they had no chance. They were going to die trying to save strangers. But Jake Morrison was smiling. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the expression of someone who had grown up on a world where everything was dangerous, where survival meant being tougher and meaner than whatever tried to kill you. It was the smile of a Deathworlder who had just been challenged. "All right then," he said quietly. "Lisa, weapons free. Show them what humans do when someone threatens innocent people. Ben, give me attack speed. Everyone hold on." The Endeavor screamed forward, and the Vrax were about to learn their first lesson about Earth and the species that called it home. The first barrage of Vrax weapons fire lit up space like angry lightning. Plasma bolts that could vaporize smaller ships streaked toward the Endeavor, and every species in the galaxy would have done the same thing. Turn away, try to dodge, run if possible. The humans did something else entirely. Jake Morrison ordered his ship to accelerate directly into the weapons fire. "Captain," Lisa shouted, her voice rising despite her training. Even she hadn't expected this move. "Trust me," Jake said, his hands steady on his command console. "Ben, angle the shields forward. Concentrate everything on the bow." The engineering chief understood immediately. By focusing their shields to one point and charging straight ahead, they could punch through the initial barrage. It was insane. It violated every tactical doctrine, but Ben's fingers flew over his controls, rerouting power as Jake had ordered. The Endeavor shook violently as plasma bolts hammered against the concentrated shields. Sparks flew from overhead panels. The lights flickered. Amy grabbed her medical console to keep from falling. But the ship kept going, kept accelerating, shields burning bright as they absorbed impossible amounts of energy. On the Vrax flagship, Commander Krenth watched in disbelief. "What are they doing? No species flies directly at concentrated fire." His tactical officer checked the scanners 3 times before answering. "Their shields are holding somehow. They're using all their power on the forward deflectors." Impossible. Those shields should have failed already, but they hadn't. The Endeavor burst through the barrage like a bullet through paper, shields crackling with energy but intact. Before the Vrax could recalibrate their weapons, the human ship was past their firing line and banking hard, coming around at an angle that brought it alongside the lead Vrax vessel. "Fire," Jake said calmly. Lisa had already locked targets. The Endeavor's missiles launched, not at the Vrax ship's hull but at its weapon arrays. The explosions weren't powerful enough to destroy the warship, but they knocked out 3 of its main cannons. The Vrax vessel reeled, suddenly vulnerable. "They're targeting our weapons," Krenth roared. "All ships focus fire on that human vessel. Destroy it now." The 3 Vrax warships turned their full arsenal on the Endeavor. The small exploration ship couldn't possibly survive such concentrated firepower. But Jake wasn't trying to survive. He was trying to buy time. "Hard roll, full reverse thrust," he ordered. The ship spun wildly, presenting different shield facings to spread out the damage. "Ben, how are we looking?" "Shields at 40% and dropping fast," Ben called back, sweat running down his face. "We can't take much more of this, Captain. We don't need much more. Ryan, are you ready?" In the cargo bay, Ryan Brooks and his security team were sealed in EVA suits, magnetic boots locked to the deck. 5 men and women, each carrying weapons designed for boarding actions. They looked at each other with the kind of nervous energy that came before combat. "Ready?" "Captain," Ryan responded. "Good, because we're going to do something really stupid." Jake turned the Endeavor toward the Vrax flagship again, not away from it, toward it. The alien crew watched in confusion as the human ship accelerated, shields glowing orange from the sustained bombardment, chunks of armor plating breaking away from the hull. "They're going to ram us," someone on the Vrax bridge shouted. Krenth gripped his command chair. "Brace for impact." All power to forward shields. But at the last second, Jake pulled up hard. The Endeavor skimmed over the Vrax flagship's hull, so close that their shields sparked against each other. And in that moment, Ryan's team activated their magnetic boots and jumped out of the cargo bay's airlock. 6 humans, flying through the vacuum of space, slammed onto the Vrax ship's hull. Their magnetic boots locked on, and they immediately began moving toward the nearest airlock. There was no hesitation, no moment of doubt. They just started cutting through the outer door with plasma torches. On the Vrax bridge, alarms blared. "Sir, we have boarders."
On our outer hull.
Krenth stared at the security feeds in shock. "They're outside? In the vacuum? Without a ship?" "Yes, sir." "They're cutting through the airlock. Kill them. Vent that section to space." "Sir, they're already in space. Venting won't do anything." It took the Vrax less than 3 minutes to organize a response team. It took Ryan's team 2 minutes to breach the airlock and get inside the Vrax ship. By the time the Virax security forces arrived, the humans had already taken defensive positions in the corridor. The Virax were large, powerful creatures. They stood 7 feet tall with thick scales that could stop small arms fire. They were bred for combat, trained from birth to conquer and dominate. They rushed down the corridor with weapons raised, confident that 6 intruders would fall quickly. They had never fought humans before. Ryan's team moved like they were dancing, a brutal choreography practiced 1,000 times. They used the corridor's corners for cover, fired in coordinated bursts, and when the Vrax got close, they fought hand-to-hand with a savagery that shocked their opponents. A Vrax warrior grabbed one of Ryan's team members, a woman named Kelly, and threw her against the wall with enough force to crack the metal. Kelly groaned, got up, and shot the Vrax in the face. Another human, a man named Dave, took a blade strike that would have killed most species. He stumbled, pressed one hand against the wound, and kept fighting with the other. The Vrax began to realize something terrible. These humans didn't stop. They didn't retreat when injured. They didn't break when outnumbered. They fought like cornered animals, except animals knew when they were beaten. Humans didn't seem to understand the concept. "Fall back," the Vrax squad leader ordered. "Request reinforcements." Ryan's team pushed forward. They weren't trying to take the ship. They were creating chaos, drawing attention, making the Vrax focus on the threat inside their vessel. While the Vrax concentrated on repelling boarders, they stopped firing at the Endeavor. Jake used the opportunity. "Lisa, target their engines. All remaining missiles. Fire everything." The Endeavor unleashed its full payload at the Vrax flagship's propulsion system. The explosions rippled across the enemy ship's stern, knocking out the main drives. The massive warship began to drift, powerless. "Ryan, extraction in 30 seconds. Get back to the airlock." Ryan's team fought their way back through the corridors. 2 of them were injured badly enough that their suits were applying emergency medical foam to keep them alive, but they all made it back to the airlock. They sealed the inner door, blew the outer one, and jumped back into space. The Endeavor swooped in, cargo bay doors open. One by one, the team members fired maneuvering jets and flew back to their ship. It was a move that required perfect timing and absolute trust. One mistake and they'd miss the ship, floating off into the void. They didn't miss. As soon as the last team member was aboard, Jake pulled the Endeavor away. The Vrax flagship was disabled. The other 2 Vrax ships held their position, unsure what to do. They had never seen anything like this. Humans fought without fear of death, used tactics that seemed insane, and refused to surrender even when hopelessly outnumbered. Jake opened a communication channel to all 3 Virax ships. "This is your last warning. Leave now or we disable your other ships the same way. Your choice." Krenth stared at the human captain's face on his screen. There was no anger there, no hatred, just a cold determination that sent a chill through the Vrax commander's spine. These humans would do exactly what they promised. They would board his other ships, fight through his crew, and disable them one by one. And they wouldn't stop even if it killed them. "Retreat," Krenth ordered quietly. "All ships jump to hyperspace." The two functional Virax warships grabbed the disabled flagship with tractor beams and pulled it away. Moments later, they vanished into faster-than-light travel. The battle was over. On the bridge of the Endeavor, no one celebrated. They were too busy running damage reports and checking on casualties. Amy was already in the cargo bay, treating Ryan's team. The ship's shields were down to 15% and several hull sections were breached. But they had won. Against impossible odds, they had driven off 3 warship and saved the diplomatic vessel. Jake opened a channel to the Harmonious Dawn. "This is Captain Morrison. Are you all right over there?" Captain Laren's voice came through, shaking with emotion. "Yes, thanks to you. We are alive thanks to you. But what are you? What kind of species fights like that?" Jake looked around his bridge at his exhausted crew. "We're human," he said simply. "We're from Earth, and we don't leave people behind." The medical bay of the Endeavor was crowded with both humans and aliens. Amy Walsh moved between patients with practiced efficiency, her medical scanner humming as she checked each person. The rescued diplomats from the Harmonious Dawn sat on examination tables, most of them in various states of shock. Captain Lyran watched as Amy treated Ryan's team. The security chief had a deep gash across his ribs that had bled significantly. Kelly had 3 fractured ribs from being thrown against the wall. Dave had been stabbed through the shoulder. Yet all 3 of them were sitting up talking, even joking with each other. "I do not understand," Lyran said to Amy. "These injuries should be fatal. Why are they not dying?" Amy looked up from sealing Dave's wound. "Fatal? These are moderate injuries. They'll be sore for a few weeks, but they'll be fine." "Fine?" Lyran's crystalline body flickered with colors that indicated confusion. That blade went completely through his shoulder. It severed muscle and damaged bone. High people would die from such trauma within minutes. Amy paused, realizing something important. "How tough are your people exactly?" "Tough?" Lyran didn't understand the question. "How much damage can you take before you die?" Lyran thought about it. "A broken bone is often fatal. Deep cuts are always fatal unless treated within seconds. Our bodies are fragile compared to most species we know." Amy sat down slowly, her expression shifting to one of growing understanding. "That's true for most species, you know?" "Yes. Some species are more durable than others, but serious injury always requires immediate medical intervention. To survive a stabbing wound like that," Lyran gestured at Dave, "is unheard of." Ben Carter walked into the medical bay, limping slightly. He had bruised his leg during the combat maneuvers but hadn't mentioned it. "Doc, you got something for this?" "Leg's getting stiff." Amy scanned him quickly. "Minor bruising. Use the compression wrap and take some anti-inflammatory meds. You'll be fine by tomorrow." Ben nodded and grabbed the wrap, sitting down to apply it himself. Lyran watched in amazement. "He is treating himself? Should you not do that? For something this minor?" "No, he's capable of handling it." Amy looked at all the aliens in her medical bay. "I think we need to have a longer conversation about human biology. You might find it disturbing." An hour later, Jake called a meeting in the ship's conference room. The Endeavor's senior crew sat on one side of the table. Captain Lyran and 3 other diplomats sat on the other side. Between them, a holographic display showed a slowly rotating image of Earth. "This is our homeworld," Jake explained. "Earth." One of the diplomats, a floating jellyfish-like being named Tella, studied the image. "It looks beautiful. The blue oceans, the green continents. It appears quite peaceful." "Appearances can be deceiving," Lisa said. She pulled up new data. Earth has a gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared. That's about twice what most civilized species consider comfortable. Lyran made a sound of surprise. "You live under double gravity?" "Standard gravity for us," Jake said. "Everything on Earth evolved in those conditions. Our bones are dense, our muscles are strong. Our cardiovascular system is built to pump blood against that gravitational pull." Ben added more information to the display. "Our atmosphere is 21% oxygen. We also have significant nitrogen and trace amounts of other gases. The atmospheric pressure at sea level is about 100 kilopascals." Tella's tentacles waved in distress. "That oxygen level is toxic. That pressure would crush my home structure." "For you, maybe," Ben said. "For us, it's home. But there's more. Earth's surface temperature ranges from negative 90 degrees Celsius at the poles to over 50 degrees in the deserts." "Impossible," one of the other diplomats said. "No species could survive such extremes." Amy pulled up medical data. "Earth is home to millions of species. Everything from bacteria that live in boiling hot springs to fish that survive in freezing water. Humans evolved in Africa, where temperatures regularly exceed 40 degrees, then spread across the entire planet. We adapted to every environment. But the dangers, Lyran said. Surely such a hostile world has predators? Oh, we have predators, Ryan said with a grim smile. We have animals that can kill humans in seconds. Bears that weigh 800 pounds. Big cats that hunt in packs. Sharks in the oceans. Crocodiles in the rivers. Venomous snakes and spiders. Parasites and diseases that can wipe out entire populations. Lisa brought up images of Earth's various deadly creatures. The alien diplomats recoiled in horror. And humans survived? With all these threats? More than survived, Jake said. We became the dominant species on the planet. We learned to hunt the predators. We developed medicine to fight the diseases. We built shelters to protect against the weather. We adapted. Earth is what the Galactic Survey teams call a Class 12 death world, Amy explained. That's the highest classification. It means the planet is so dangerous that intelligent life shouldn't be able to develop there. But we did. Lyran was beginning to understand. That is why you fight the way you do. Why your people can survive injuries that would kill us. Why you ran directly at weapons fire without fear. We're not without fear, Jake corrected. We're terrified most of the time. But Earth taught us that fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. It doesn't mean you can't deal with it. Ryan leaned forward. Every human grows up learning to handle danger. We fall and scrape our knees as children. We get sick and recover. We face bullies and learn to stand up for ourselves. By the time we're adults, we've survived 100 things that could have killed us. Your childhood is a survival test? Tella asked, horrified. In a way, yeah, Ben said. But it makes us strong. It teaches us that we can overcome challenges. That pain is temporary. That even when we're scared, we can keep going. Amy added, human bodies are designed for persistence. We heal quickly from most injuries. We can function with broken bones, with wounds that would incapacitate other species. We can survive days without water, weeks without food. Our bodies just keep going. We're also pack animals, Lisa said. We bond with other humans. We form groups. We protect each other. That's instinctive for us. When we saw your ship under attack, we didn't think about the danger. We thought about people who needed help. Jake pulled up a new image, this one showing Earth's history. Our species has survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods, droughts, and plagues. We've been through mass extinctions. We've fought wars with each other for thousands of years. We've struggled and died and kept pushing forward. That's what humans do. We persist. The conference room was silent for a long moment. The alien diplomats looked at each other, their faces showing a mixture of awe and terror. Finally, Lyran spoke. You are Deathworlders. You come from a place that would kill any of us within days, perhaps hours. You fight like you have nothing to lose because you have already survived the impossible just by growing up. I guess that's one way to put it, Jake said. And now you travel the stars, Lyran continued. You explore the galaxy. You offer friendship to species like mine. His voice grew softer. You risk your lives to save strangers. That's what good people do, Amy said simply, no matter what planet they're from. Tella's tentacles moved in a pattern that indicated deep thought. We must inform the Galactic Council of this. They need to know what humans are, what you are capable of. Are we going to be a problem? Ryan asked, tension in his voice. Are you scared of us? Lyran's body flickered with colors that humans were learning meant sincerity. Scared, perhaps a little, but also grateful and hopeful. The galaxy has many threats, many dangers. We have always faced them with diplomacy, with peace, but sometimes peace is not enough. Sometimes you need people who know how to fight. We didn't come to the stars to be warriors, Jake said firmly. We came to explore, to learn, to make friends. I understand, Lyran said, but perhaps you can be both. Perhaps the galaxy needs friends who are also fighters. Friends who will stand beside us when the darkness comes. Lisa looked at Jake, then at the rest of the crew. They were all thinking the same thing. They had left Earth to find new worlds, to discover new life, to be explorers and scientists. But the galaxy was bigger and more dangerous than they had imagined, and somehow being from a death world had given them abilities that no one else possessed. We'll help where we can, Jake said finally, but on our terms. We're not mercenaries. We're not conquerors. We're just people trying to do the right thing. That may be enough, Lyran said. In fact, that may be exactly what the galaxy needs. Unity Prime hung in space like a massive wheel, its ring structure slowly rotating to create artificial gravity. It was the neutral meeting ground for the Galactic Council, home to representatives from over 300 species. The station was considered one of the safest places in the galaxy, protected by ancient treaties and monitored by peacekeeping forces from dozens of worlds. The Endeavour docked at one of the outer ports, dwarfed by the massive diplomatic vessels surrounding it. Jake and his senior crew prepared to meet with the Council itself, an honor that few species received, especially ones so new to galactic society. "Remember," Jake told his team as they walked through the docking tunnel, "we're guests here. Be respectful. Don't start any trouble." Ryan adjusted his uniform. "When have I ever started trouble? Do you want that list in chronological or alphabetical order?" Lisa asked with a slight smile. They emerged into a vast corridor filled with alien beings of every size and shape. Creatures floated past them in bubbles of liquid. Others walked on 4 legs, 6 legs, or slithered along the floor. Some were tall as trees, others small as children. The diversity was overwhelming. A small robot approached them, its voice pleasant and mechanical. "Captain Morrison? The Council is ready to receive you. Please follow me." They walked through Unity Prime's corridors, past shops and restaurants catering to hundreds of different biologies. They saw gardens growing under alien suns, water features that flowed upward instead of down, and art that existed in spectrums human eyes couldn't fully perceive. Finally, they entered the council chamber. It was a circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers, each position designed for a different species' needs. At the center, a platform waited for those addressing the council. Hundreds of beings watched as the humans walked to the platform. "Captain Jake Morrison of Earth," a voice announced. It came from everywhere and nowhere, translated instantly into English by the station's computer. "You and your crew stand before the Galactic Council. We have invited you here to discuss recent events." Jake stepped forward. "Thank you for seeing us. We're honored to be here." A large tentacled being spoke from one of the high seats. This was Valar, the council speaker. "We have reviewed the records from the Harmonious Dawn. We have seen what you did, what your species can do." "We just helped some people in trouble," Jake said. "You defeated 3 Vrax warships with a single exploration vessel," Valar responded. "You boarded an enemy ship in the vacuum of space. You sustained injuries that would kill most species and continued fighting. This is not just helping, this is extraordinary." Another council member, a being made of living crystal, spoke up. "We have received your species registration data. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating. We were curious why any species would choose to leave such a place. Now we understand. You did not leave because you feared it. You left because you mastered it." Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Being called Masters of Earth felt wrong somehow. Humans had never truly mastered their planet. They had simply learned to survive it. Valar continued. "The Vrax Dominion has been expanding for 70 years. They conquer peaceful species, enslave populations, and destroy those who resist. The Council has tried diplomacy. We have tried sanctions. We have tried peacekeeping forces. Nothing works. Why not?" Ben asked. "Because we are civilized species," a bird-like council member explained. "We evolved on peaceful worlds. We developed technology before we developed violence. War is something we study in history, not something we practice. Our peacekeeping forces are trained to defend, not to attack." "The Vrax come from a harsh world," Valar said. "Not as harsh as Earth, but difficult enough. They understand violence in ways most of us do not. When our peacekeepers face them, the Vrax see weakness. They see species who have forgotten how to fight." Amy spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "So you want us to fight for you?" "No," Valar said immediately. "We want you to teach us. We want you to help us build defenses that actually work. We want you to show us how to stand against aggression without becoming aggressors ourselves." The council chamber fell silent. Jake looked at his crew, seeing his own doubts reflected in their faces. They were explorers, not soldiers. They had fought the Vrax because people needed help, but that didn't mean they wanted to become warriors. "Can we see the refugee stations?" Jake asked suddenly. Valar's tentacles moved in surprise. "Why?" "Because if you're asking us to help fight a war, I need to see what we're fighting for. I need to see the people you're trying to protect." Valar considered this. "Very well. We will arrange transport." 2 hours later, the human crew stood in a refugee station orbiting a dead world. The station was crowded beyond capacity with beings who had fled Vrak's conquest. Families huddled in small spaces. Children of a dozen species played in corridors, trying to find joy in a place that had none. Medical facilities overflowed with injured and sick. A nurse, her species unknown to the humans, explained as she worked. This station was built for 10,000. We now house 50,000. We do what we can, but supplies are limited. Medicine is scarce. Many die waiting for treatment. They walked past a section where refugees were being processed. An old alien sat on a bench, his body thin and weak. He wore clothes that had once been fine but were now rags. Through a translator, he told his story. I was a teacher. I had students who loved to learn. Then the Vraks came. They burned our schools, killed those who resisted, took the strong ones to work as slaves. My family and I escaped on a cargo ship. My wife died during the journey. My children are somewhere on this station. I have not seen them in weeks. Ryan knelt beside the old teacher. We'll help you find them. Why? The old alien asked. You do not know me. You do not know my species. Don't need to, Ryan said. You're a father looking for his kids. That's enough. They spent 3 hours on that station. They helped reunite families. They shared their food supplies. They used their medical knowledge to treat injuries. And they listened to stories. Hundreds of stories from beings who had lost everything to Vrak's aggression. When they returned to Unity Prime, the crew was quiet. They gathered in a private room provided by the council. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Amy broke the silence. We have to help them. Agreed, Ben said immediately. Lisa nodded. But how? We're one ship. We can't fight an entire empire. We don't have to fight an empire, Jake said slowly. We just have to teach others how to defend themselves. Ryan stood up and paced the room. The council species are peaceful. They've never had to fight for survival like we have, but that doesn't mean they can't learn. They're intelligent. They're capable. They just need someone to show them. Show them what? Ben asked. How to be violent. No, Jake said. How to be strong. There's a difference. Violence is easy. Strength is knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It's protecting the weak without becoming a bully yourself. Amy looked at Jake. You want to help them build a real defense force, one that can stand against the Vraks. I want to give them a choice, Jake said. Right now, they have no choice. When the Vraks attack, they can only run or surrender. That's not right. Everyone deserves the right to defend themselves. Lisa pulled up a display showing the refugee stations scattered across council space. There were dozens of them, each overcrowded with beings displaced by Vrak's conquest. If we do this, we're changing things. We're bringing Earth's way of thinking to species that have never known real conflict. Is that bad? Ryan asked. I don't know, Lisa admitted. Maybe we make things worse. Maybe we start an arms race. Maybe we turn the galaxy into a war zone. Or maybe we save lives, Ben countered. Those refugees didn't ask to be attacked. They didn't do anything wrong. They're suffering because someone stronger decided to take what they had. Jake made his decision. I'll contact Earth Command. This is bigger than us. They need to know what's happening out here. They need to decide if humanity wants to get involved. And if they say no, Amy asked. Jake smiled sadly. Then we do it anyway. Because sometimes the right thing to do isn't the easy thing. Sometimes it's not even the smart thing, but it's still right. They returned to the council chamber. Velar waited for them, along with dozens of other council members. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. We saw the refugees, Jake said. We heard their stories. We understand what you're facing. And? Velar asked, and we'll help. But we need time to contact our government. This is a decision that affects all of humanity, not just us. We'll need approval, resources, and volunteers. How long? Velar asked. A few weeks, maybe a month. Velar's tentacles moved in what the humans had learned was satisfaction. That is acceptable. We have waited 70 years for someone to help us stand against the Vraks. We can wait a few more weeks. Jake nodded. We'll need access to your military data. Ship designs, weapons technology, tactical information. Everything you have. It is yours, Velar said. And in return? In return, we'll teach you what we know about defense. About tactics. About surviving against a stronger enemy. Jake paused. But we do it our way. We train your people to be defenders, not attackers. We build strength, not aggression. Agreed? Agreed, Velar said. Welcome to the fight, Deathworlders of Earth. May your strength become ours. The message from Jake Morrison reached Earth 6 days after the council meeting. It traveled through communication relays, was decoded by military intelligence, and landed on the desk of the United Space Command within hours. By the end of the day, it had reached the highest levels of Earth's government. 3 weeks later, Unity Prime sensors detected an incoming fleet. Not military warships, but a mixed collection of vessels that made the station's traffic controllers scramble to find docking space. There were decommissioned military ships, retrofitted cargo haulers, modified civilian transports, and even a few private yachts. 53 ships in total carrying over 3,000 humans. Jake stood at the docking bay as the first shuttle arrived. The door opened and a woman in a crisp military uniform stepped out. She was in her 50s with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her came more humans, some in uniform, others in civilian clothes. "Captain Morrison," the woman said, extending her hand. "Admiral Kate Sullivan. Earth Command sent me to coordinate this operation." Jake shook her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. "I didn't expect them to send an admiral. You asked for help defending an entire sector of space against a hostile empire. They weren't going to send a lieutenant." Kate looked around at the alien beings watching from a safe distance. "So these are our new allies." "Some of them. The Council represents 300 species. Most of them have never seen combat. Then we'll teach them." Kate gestured to the people behind her. "I brought military trainers, tacticians, engineers, and medical staff. Also brought about 2,000 volunteers who just wanted to help." A large man stepped forward, his uniform marked with colonel's insignia. "Chris Bennett, Ground Forces Commander. Heard you needed people who know how to fight." "We need people who know how to teach fighting," Jake corrected. "These aliens aren't soldiers. They're civilians who've never held weapons." Chris nodded slowly. "Understood. We'll start with basics." More shuttles arrived over the next few hours. Jake watched as humans poured into Unity Prime. There were former soldiers, yes, but also teachers, doctors, mechanics, and scientists. There was even a group of college students who had volunteered for a semester abroad program. Except their abroad was an alien space station. A young woman with oil-stained hands approached Jake. "Pete Davis, engineer. I worked on the Mars colony ships before this. Heard you need help with alien technology." "We do," Ben said, stepping forward. "I'm Ben Carter, Endeavor's chief engineer. The Council species have amazing technology, but it's all designed for peace. We need to make it work for defense without turning it into pure weapons." Pete grinned. "That sounds like a fun challenge." Another person, a slim woman with glasses and nervous energy, joined them. "Laura Kim, xenobiologist. I've been studying the files Earth has on alien species. There's so much we don't know about their biology. I want to help make sure our training doesn't accidentally hurt them." Amy immediately took Laura under her wing. "You're going to be very busy. Every species has different limitations. What's easy for humans might be impossible for them." Over the next week, the humans organized themselves. Kate set up a command structure that mixed military efficiency with civilian flexibility. She divided the volunteers into teams based on their skills and experience. Chris took charge of combat training. He set up a facility in one of Unity Prime's cargo bays, converting it into a training ground. His first class had 20 aliens from 10 different species. They stood in nervous groups, eyeing the weapons laid out on tables with fear. "Good morning," Chris said, his voice calm and friendly. "I know you're scared. That's okay. Fear is normal. What we're going to do is teach you how to manage that fear and use it to keep yourself and others safe." One of the aliens, a small furry creature named Tico, raised a paw. "I do not want to hurt anyone." "Neither do I," Chris said honestly. "I've been a soldier for 20 years and I've never enjoyed violence. But sometimes bad people do bad things. When that happens, good people need to be ready to stop them. That's what we're teaching. Not how to attack, but how to defend." The training started simple. Chris taught them how to hold weapons properly, how to stand in ways that protected vital organs, how to move as a unit. He was patient when they made mistakes, encouraging when they got frustrated, and firm when they tried to give up. Meanwhile, Kate worked with the Council's military leaders. They gathered in a strategy room, holographic displays showing the current positions of Rax forces in Council territories. "Your current defensive doctrine is reactive," Kate explained. "You wait for attacks, then respond. That gives the Vrax all the advantages. They choose when and where to strike." A Council admiral, a being with 4 arms and compound eyes, spoke up. "What do you suggest?" We need to establish defensive positions at key locations. Create strong points that the Vraks can't easily bypass. Make them fight for every system they want to take. And most importantly, we need early warning systems. Know when they're coming before they arrive. That sounds like a lot of resources, another council member said. It is, Kate admitted, but it's cheaper than losing planets. The Vraks have taken, 30 systems in the past decade? How many more before you decide defense is worth the cost? The words were harsh but needed. The council had been avoiding the reality of their situation for too long. They had hoped diplomacy would work, that somehow the Vraks would stop on their own. They hadn't. Pete and Ben worked together in the engineering sections examining council technology. The aliens had incredible sensors, energy shields that were far more efficient than Earth's, and propulsion systems that could cross vast distances quickly. But their weapons were minimal, designed more for mining or scientific research than combat. This is actually good, Pete said, examining a shield generator. We don't have to teach them to build weapons from scratch. We just need to modify what they already have. Ben nodded. Their mining lasers could be adapted for point defense. Their sensors could track incoming missiles. Their shields are strong enough to handle combat if we adjust the power distribution. They presented their findings to the Council's engineering corps. At first, the alien engineers were reluctant. They had built their technology for peaceful purposes. The idea of turning it into weapons felt wrong. Think of it as dual use, Pete suggested. Everything we're proposing can still be used for its original purpose. A mining laser is still a mining laser, but if someone attacks your mining ship, wouldn't you want to defend yourself? Slowly, the alien engineers began to understand. They weren't building weapons of war. They were adding defensive capabilities to tools they already had. Laura worked with the medical teams, creating databases of alien physiology. She discovered that most council species had much lower pain tolerances than humans, faster metabolic rates, and more fragile skeletal structures. She developed training protocols that accounted for these differences. Humans can do 100 push-ups as basic training, she explained to Amy. Most of these species can't do 10 without injury. We need to scale everything down and focus on what they can actually accomplish. Ryan trained council security forces in small unit tactics. He taught them how to clear rooms, how to set up defensive perimeters, how to evacuate civilians under fire. His students struggled at first, but gradually they improved. One day, a student named Vrel approached Ryan after class. Vrel was from a species of amphibious beings. His skin covered in moisture-maintaining membranes. Why do you teach us to protect others first? Should we not protect ourselves? Ryan sat down on an equipment crate. Let me tell you something about Earth. We have firefighters, people who run into burning buildings to save others. We have medics who treat wounded soldiers in the middle of battles. We have teachers who shield students during disasters. You know what all of them have in common? What? Vrel asked. They're ordinary people who decided someone else's life was worth risking their own for. That's not about being from Earth, that's about being good. And you seem like good people to me. Vrel's skin changed colors in a way that indicated deep emotion. Thank you. I will try to be worthy of your teaching. After 6 weeks of training, Kate called a meeting of all the senior staff, both human and alien. They gathered in the main conference room, humans standing comfortably while aliens used their various seating arrangements. We've accomplished a lot, Kate said. We've trained over 500 council personnel in basic defense. We've upgraded 50 ships with defensive modifications. We've established early warning networks in 3 systems. But it is not enough, Feller said from his position at the head of the council table. The Vraks continue to attack. Just yesterday they struck a colony in the Outer Rim. 2,000 civilians dead. Our forces could not stop them. The room fell silent. All the training, all the preparation, and people were still dying. Chris spoke up. We need a real test. A place where we can prove that the defense works. Show the galaxy that the council can fight back. Where? Kate asked. Feeler pulled up a star chart. One system blinked red. Polara 7. It is a heavily populated garden world. Intelligence suggests the Vraks will attack within the month. It is valuable enough that they will commit. Polara 7 was beautiful from orbit. Its surface was covered in purple forests and blue oceans, with cities that glowed like jewels in the night. 300 million Palarans lived there, peaceful beings who had never known war. They were artists and philosophers, their entire culture built around creating beauty. Now that beauty was about to be tested by fire. The defense fleet gathered in high orbit. 40 ships, a mix of human volunteers and council vessels with upgraded defensive systems. It wasn't much compared to the Vrax force that intelligence predicted would arrive, but it was all they had. Kate stood on the bridge of her flagship, a retrofitted Earth destroyer called the Resolute. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of every friendly ship. Status report. All ships are in position, Lisa reported from the tactical station. Ground forces have deployed to major cities. Evacuation shelters are ready. Medical facilities are prepared for mass casualties. How are our alien crews holding up? Kate asked. Scared? Lisa admitted. But holding together. The training is helping. They know what to do even if they're terrified of doing it. Jake's voice came through from the Endeavor, positioned with a group of faster ships. Admiral, we're picking up hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts. They're coming. Kate took a deep breath. All ships, battle stations. This is what we trained for. Remember, we're not here to win. We're here to make them regret attacking. We're here to show the galaxy that council worlds can defend themselves. The Vrax fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. 20 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons. They immediately began forming attack formations, confident that the small defense fleet would scatter or surrender. Instead, the defense fleet held position. On the lead Vrax ship, Commander Krenth recognized some of the vessels. Humans, they're here. He felt a twinge of unease. The last time he had fought humans, they had disabled his flagship and forced him to retreat. But that had been one ship. This time he had 20 warships. The humans could not possibly win. All ships attack formation, Krenth ordered. Destroy the defense fleet first, then begin planetary bombardment. The Vrax fleet advanced. Kate waited until they were committed, then gave her first order. Atmospheric groups execute diving maneuver. 6 ships, including the Endeavor, suddenly dropped toward the planet. They weren't retreating. They were diving into Polaris 7's atmosphere, using the thick air as cover. The Vrax weapons lost tracking locks as the ships disappeared into storm clouds. What are they doing? Krenth demanded. His tactical officer checked the sensors. They're flying in the atmosphere, sir, using weather patterns to mask their signatures. It's insane. The atmospheric stress will tear their ships apart. But the ships didn't tear apart. Human engineers had reinforced them for exactly this kind of maneuver. Jake pushed the Endeavor through a storm system, lightning crackling around the hull, wind buffeting the shields. It was dangerous and uncomfortable. It was also effective. Fire solution locked, Lisa called out, targeting Vrax Ship 3. The Endeavor burst out of the clouds, fired a volley of missiles, and dove back into cover before the Vrax could respond. The missiles struck the Vrax ship's engines, not destroying it but damaging its propulsion. One enemy ship was now slower, more vulnerable. The other atmospheric ships repeated the tactic. They used the planet itself as a shield, popping up to strike and then disappearing. The Vrax had never seen anything like it. Their weapons were designed for space combat, not for tracking targets through atmospheric interference. Meanwhile, the main fleet engaged the Virax head-on. Council ships that had once fled from combat now held their ground. Their upgraded shields absorbed the initial barrage. Their modified mining lasers, now functioning as point defense, shot down incoming missiles. On one council ship, a crystalline captain named Shen gripped his command chair as his vessel shook from impacts. His crew, trained by Lisa and others, worked with frightened efficiency. Shield holding at 60%, his engineer reported. Return fire, Shen ordered, his voice wavering but determined. Target their weapons. The ship's mining lasers, enhanced with human targeting systems, found their marks. A Vrax warship's weapon array exploded, reducing its offensive capability. It was a small victory, but it was a victory. On the planet's surface, Chris led ground forces in preparing the cities. The Vrax would try to land troops once they cleared the orbital defense. His team set up defensive positions at key locations, using the Palaran's own buildings as cover. A young Palaran soldier, barely trained, approached Chris. Commander, I'm scared. I don't know if I can do this. Chris checked his weapon, making sure it was ready. Being scared is okay. I'm scared too. But look around you. He gestured at the city. All these people are counting on us. Your people. They need us to be brave for them. What if I fail? Then you get up and try again. That's what soldiers do. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep fighting. The young Palaran nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. In orbit, the battle intensified. The Vraks, frustrated by the atmospheric fighters, sent half their fleet to pursue them. It was a mistake. The chase led them over populated areas where Palaran ground-based defenses opened fire. Upgraded with human technology, these defenses could now actually damage Vrak ships. Kate saw the Vraks fleet splitting and seized the opportunity. All ships concentrate fire on the lead group. Hit them with everything. The defense fleet focused their attack on 10 Vraks warships that had remained in high orbit. Missiles launched from a dozen ships simultaneously. Energy weapons that had once been scientific instruments now served as improvised cannons. The coordinated assault overwhelmed the Vraks shields. One Vraks warship exploded, its reactor breaching. Another lost power and began drifting. The Vraks formation broke as ships tried to evade the unexpected firepower. Krenth watched in disbelief. How are they doing this? They're civilians, scientists and traders. His tactical officer's voice was shaken. Sir, they're fighting like the humans taught them. They're using tactics we've never seen from Council species. On the Resolute's bridge, casualties reports were coming in. 2 Council ships severely damaged. 300 crew members injured or dead. The human ships were holding up better, but they were taking damage too. The Endeavor's shields were down to 30%. Another ship, a human cargo hauler crewed by volunteers, had lost its weapons entirely but stayed in formation, using its hull to shield a damaged Council vessel. Pete Davis, aboard an engineering support ship, coordinated damage control across the fleet. Get repair teams to Council Ship 7. Their port shield generator is failing. Human Ship 15, can you assist? On it, came the response. Laura worked in the medical bay of Unity Prime, which had moved into system as a mobile hospital. Wounded were being evacuated from the battle, and she treated injuries from half a dozen species. An alien with 3 legs limped in, burned from an electrical fire. Laura checked her database, identified the species, and administered the correct treatment. You're going to be okay, she told the soldier. The burns will heal. You'll be back to your unit in a few days. I want to go now, the soldier said. My friends are still fighting. They'll still be fighting in a few days. Rest first. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Vraks, realizing they couldn't easily break the defense, tried to push through to the planet. Chris watched from the ground as Vrak's landing craft began descending. Here they come, he said into his communicator. All units engage on my mark. The landing craft reached 500 meters. Chris gave the order. Mark! Defensive fire erupted from buildings, streets, and hidden positions. The Palarans, fighting for their homes, found courage they didn't know they had. The Vrak's landing craft took heavy fire. Several crashed. Others made it to the ground but found themselves facing an organized defense instead of panicking civilians. In one city square, a Vrak's assault team emerged from their craft. They expected easy conquest. Instead, they met Palaran soldiers who had been trained to fight as units, to cover each other, to fall back and regroup when needed. The battle was fierce and close. Ryan fought alongside a mixed team of humans and Palarans. He took a hit to his shoulder, ignored the pain, and kept firing. Next to him, a Palaran soldier saw this and felt something change inside. If the humans could fight through pain, so could they. In orbit, Kate made a difficult decision. All atmospheric ships returned to space. We're going to try something, Jake acknowledged. Understood. Coming up, the 6 ships burst out of the atmosphere in a coordinated climb. As they emerged, they released every missile they had left. 40 missiles launched simultaneously, all targeting one Vrak's warship. The sheer volume overwhelmed the ship's defenses. Explosions rippled across its hull. The warship broke apart, debris scattering into space. Krenth saw another of his ships destroyed and finally understood. He could win this battle. He had enough firepower to eventually break through the defense, but the cost would be enormous. He had already lost 3 ships with several more badly damaged. The defenders were making him pay for every meter of space, and the humans had taught the Council species something the Vraks had never expected them to learn. They had taught them to fight back. The medical bay on Unity Prime was quieter now, 3 days after the battle. The emergency cases had been treated, the critical patients stabilized. What remained were soldiers recovering from injuries, trying to process what they had been through. Amy walked between beds, checking on both human and alien patients. She stopped at a bed where a Palaran soldier named Tico lay. his arm in a regenerative cast. The small furry being had been injured when debris struck his position during the ground battle. "How are you feeling?" Amy asked. Tico's ears drooped. "My body heals, but my mind does not. I close my eyes and see the battle. I hear the explosions. I am afraid all the time now." Amy sat down beside his bed. "That's called trauma. It's normal after combat. Your brain is trying to process something it was never designed to handle." "The humans do not seem affected," Tico said. "I see them joking, laughing." Ryan returned to duty the same day he was injured. "How do you cope with such things?" Amy was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you a secret? We're not coping better. We're just hiding it better." Ryan jokes because if he doesn't, he'll think too much about what happened. "I work long hours because when I stop, I remember everyone I couldn't save. We're all struggling, Tico. We just have thousands of years of practice pretending we're fine." "That sounds exhausting." "It is," Amy admitted. "But here's the thing. Humans learned a long time ago that trauma is easier to handle when you don't face it alone. That's why we have each other. Why we talk about our experiences. Why we help each other heal." Tico considered this. "Your species bonds with each other strongly." "We bond with everyone strongly," Amy corrected. "You're one of us now, Tico. You fought beside humans. That makes you family in our eyes. You don't have to face this alone." Tears formed in Tico's large eyes. It was the first time he had cried since the battle. Amy stayed with him, not speaking, just being present. Sometimes that was all that was needed. In another part of the station, Valar had organized what humans would call a cultural exchange. Several species gathered in a large common area. The humans brought food from Earth, music, and stories. The aliens brought their own traditions to share. Ben sat with a group of alien engineers trying to explain human problem-solving. "See, when something breaks on Earth, we have a saying. If it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid." A crystalline engineer flickered with confusion. "But that makes no logical sense. Something cannot be both stupid and functional." "Sure it can," Pete said, joining the conversation. "Let me give you an example. During the battle, one of our ships lost its primary cooling system. By all logic, the ship should have shut down, but the crew rerouted coolant through the food preparation systems. They turned the kitchen into a radiator." "That sounds dangerous," another engineer said. "It was," Pete agreed, "but it worked. They kept fighting. That's the human way. We don't have perfect solutions, so we make imperfect ones work." Ben added, "Earth taught us to be adaptable, because our planet throws everything at us. Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, droughts. We never know what's coming next, so we learned to improvise." The alien engineers began to understand. Their species had evolved on stable worlds with predictable conditions. They designed elegant solutions for specific problems. Humans designed messy solutions that could handle multiple problems because they never knew which problem would show up next. Nearby, Lisa sat with Shen, the crystalline captain who had commanded his ship during the battle. They were reviewing tactical recordings, but the conversation had drifted to philosophy. "I do not understand human courage," Shen admitted. "You know you might die. You know you might be injured. Yet you still fight. Why?" Lisa thought about it carefully. "Because someone has to. Because if good people don't stand up to bad people, the bad people win. It's that simple. But you could leave. You could return to Earth and be safe." "We could," Lisa agreed. "But then we'd have to live with ourselves knowing we abandoned people who needed help. That's worse than dying in a way. Dying is quick. Guilt lasts forever." Shen's body flickered with colors that indicated deep thought. "So you choose the possibility of physical death to avoid the certainty of spiritual death?" "I guess so, yeah." "That is very human," Shen said, "but also very brave. I think my species is learning from yours." Chris organized group therapy sessions for the combined forces. Humans and aliens sat together in circles talking about their experiences. At first, the aliens were hesitant. Their cultures didn't typically discuss weakness or fear, but the humans went first, sharing their own struggles. Ryan talked about nightmares he had from earlier conflicts. A human medic named Sarah spoke about losing patients during the battle. Pete admitted he was afraid every time he went near a damaged reactor. Slowly, the aliens began to share too. A four-armed council soldier admitted he had frozen in combat, paralyzed by fear. A Palaran fighter confessed she wanted to run away when the Vrax landed. A crystalline warrior said he felt ashamed for being scared. Fear doesn't make you weak, Chris said to the group. Fear is your brain trying to keep you alive. It's information. What matters is what you do with that fear. Do you let it control you, or do you acknowledge it and act anyway? But humans seem fearless, someone said. Ryan laughed bitterly. Fearless? I'm terrified all the time. I'm scared I'll let my team down. I'm scared I'll make the wrong call and get someone killed. I'm scared of dying. The difference is I've learned to function while scared. How did you learn that? The soldier asked. Practice, Ryan said simply. Earth gave us lots of practice. Every human here has faced something scary. We've all been in situations where we had to choose between safety and doing what's right, over and over, until it becomes almost instinctive. Laura organized educational sessions about human biology and psychology for the alien medical staff. She explained concepts that seemed obvious to humans but were revolutionary to other species. Human children play fight, she explained to a group of confused alien doctors. They wrestle, they chase each other, they compete in games. This teaches them physical skills, risk assessment, and how to handle losing. You teach your children violence? One doctor asked, horrified. We teach them controlled conflict, Laura corrected. There's a difference. A child who learns to fall safely while playing is less likely to be seriously injured when they fall by accident. A child who loses games learns that failure isn't the end of the world. She pulled up human developmental data. Humans are born incredibly weak. A human infant can't walk, can't feed itself, can't survive alone for years. But this extended childhood is when we learn to survive in a dangerous world. We explore. We take risks. We learn from mistakes. By adulthood, we've already survived thousands of small dangers. An alien doctor studied the data. So human resilience is trained, not innate? Both, Laura said. We have physical resilience from our biology. But psychological resilience comes from experience. From learning that we can overcome challenges. That pain is temporary. That fear doesn't have to stop us. In the recreation areas, something unexpected was happening. Humans and aliens were becoming friends. Not just colleagues, but actual friends who spent free time together. Jake found himself teaching a group of young Palorans about Earth's history. They were fascinated by stories of human exploration, of people who climbed mountains just because they were there, who sailed across oceans without knowing what was on the other side. But why? A Paloran asked. Why risk death for no practical purpose? Because humans need challenges, Jake explained. We need to test ourselves, to see what we're capable of. Some of our greatest achievements came from people who were told something was impossible and decided to try anyway. He showed them pictures of Earth. Mountains, deserts, jungles, oceans, places that would kill most galactic species but that humans called home. We've been to the top of our highest mountain. We've been to our deepest ocean. We've walked on our moon and sent robots to other planets, not because we had to, but because we wanted to see what was there. The Palorans looked at each other. Their species had never valued such things. They valued art, philosophy, beauty, but they were beginning to see value in the human perspective too. Sometimes you had to face challenges to grow. Ben organized a party in one of the station's large gathering spaces. Humans brought music players and started dancing. At first, the aliens watched in confusion, but gradually some joined in. The dancing was chaotic and uncoordinated, with species moving in ways their bodies were designed for. But it was joyful. Amy danced with Tico, the small Paloran moving awkwardly to the rhythm. He was laughing for the first time since the battle. This is strange, he said. But good strange. That's the best kind of strange, Amy agreed. Veeler watched from a balcony, his tentacles moving in contentment. Beside him stood Kate, observing the scene below. Your people are changing mine, Veeler said. Not just teaching them to fight. Teaching them to live differently. Is that a bad thing? Kate asked. No, I think it is exactly what we needed. For too long we have avoided discomfort. We sought only peace and harmony. But peace maintained through fear of conflict is not true peace. It is merely postponed violence, and so what now? Kate asked. Veeler's tentacles gestured toward the celebrating crowd below. Now we learn. We learn to be strong without being cruel. We learn to